Hey Hillary, good morning. So it's a little windy today, but we're gonna go ahead and make this video as it's been way too long since I got a video made for you with these two Mustangs. So we're actually coming up on, I guess we're at 3 weeks, coming up on a month of working with these guys, which is crazy. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. But so like I said, Tehya is making progress for sure, just not as fast as I would like. But with these Mustangs, it's you have, and with any horse really, you have to go at the pace of the horse. You can't have expectations. So what I'd like to do today is just go up and halter her. The last 2 days I've been able to just walk right up to her and halter. Now she's still kind of flinchy, she's still kind of rocks back on her feet like that, but at least I'm able to just go up and get the halter on her. And then I start doing some desensitizing and some different things. And so that's what I'd like to do today, is just walk right up. So we'll see if it works. So good. I like that she stays engaged with me right there. You can see a little twitchiness, a little nervousness right there. Not too bad. Just gonna go with her here. Wait for her to kind of choose to stay here and shut that down. There you go. Good. And then I'll back off. Just using approach and release, approach and release, approach and release. Just trying to teach her that she doesn't have to back away from me. She doesn't have to run away. The right answer, the thing that'll get her the release, is just to stand still. That's better. Eventually I'd like to be able to halter her with a lot less signs of anxiety right there. But one thing that I've noticed with some horses, and she's like this, it's like once you get them caught, a lot of the anxiety goes away. I think a lot of their anxiety is tied to just the act of getting the halter on. Once they get the halter on, then they kind of relax and they're like, oh, okay, I'm caught. Now I it's kind of changes their, I don't know, changes their mental state a little bit from being like, should I run away? Should I run away? And then they know, well, now I can't run away because the halter's on, so I'll relax. So I kind of just want to not work on it too much right now. Just get the halter on, and now I'm going to wait for her to relax now that the halter's on. So hopefully after a little while of doing this, when I come in with the halter, she kind of comes up and is looking to be caught instead of, hopefully that'll kind of override the fear that she has. And of course, once I get her caught, I'm going to do a lot of desensitizing today. But the other thing I don't want to do is just put the halter on and then immediately start going to work, dragging her different ways, doing groundwork, lateral flexion, whatever, because I don't want her to associate the halter with work or being scared or any of those types of things. So now that the halter's on, I'm just going to wait for her to lick and chew. And this may take quite a while. She is very, very stoic about her licks and chews. She can go a very long time just kind of locked, So we're just gonna wait. She's kind of getting those sleepy eyes, a lot of twitching going on in her muzzle. So this is all good. There she rebalances her feet, which I like. There's a lot going on in her brain right now in terms of relaxing. She kind of snapped out of it when I started talking, but his eyes were getting super sleepy, and there's a lot of just twitching, and it always looks like a computer that's going haywire. It's like, I don't know, the old cartoons, with springs coming out of the computer and stuff. That's what it always looks like to me when they get into that mode, where there's all this twitching and their eyes are blinking in weird patterns. But it's good. It means she's relaxing. And she will probably drop her head down to the ground a few times and pick it right back up, and kind of bounce it down, back up. She tends to do that a few times before she looks in shoes. So probably still got a while before she looks in shoes. But again, I've talked about this before, but I just think it's so important to wait for the horse to come all the way down. If you think about that 0 to 10 scale of anxiety, 0 being completely calm, 10 being super anxious and flying off the handle and bucking you off or whatever, she might be at like a 5 right now. So she's not so anxious that she's running around and crazy, but she's certainly not completely relaxed and just relaxed, right? If I were to just go ahead and go on and do the next thing with her at this 5, it would basically train her to stay at a 5 forever. What I want to do is, after each interaction, if I can, let her go ahead and clear her mind out to a 0 and get that practice. Every iteration of doing this is a mental rep, just like being in the gym. This is the gym for her brain. We're getting in reps of going from whatever, 5, 10, wherever she's at on the scale, all the way down to 0. Full lick and chew, and she gets the reward, and then we go again. And this is why it takes so long. I mean, I've been doing this for 3 weeks now, and it doesn't seem like I've made a lot of progress, but once, it's like building the foundation of a house. It doesn't look like a lot while you're digging the trenches and putting in the rebar and pouring the concrete for the foundation. But as soon as you start building the house, it goes real fast if you have a good foundation, and it doesn't collapse very easily after that. And same with her. Things are going to move a lot quicker once we get her to where she really learns how to relax on her own all the time. If we skip this step, you're going to have a more dangerous horse forever. You're going to have a horse that's harder to get her to do things because you'll be working against her anxiety and against the tension in her body forever. So. The cat just ran right underneath her legs. She didn't really care. I love how she's starting to look around here. This is what I call them becoming aware. You might notice how the first 15 minutes or so, whatever, standing here, the whole time I've been in the pen, she's been very stiff, very locked, right? And right there is the first time she kind of loosened up and started looking around. I was like, oh, I'm actually here, rather than being just kind of that laser focus right down the middle, right? So it's always a good sign when you see that. You also saw with that her neck loosened up a little bit, her head came down a little bit. Just her whole body tension kind of dissipated right there. It's not much. I mean, she tensed back up pretty quick after that, but it's at least a starting point, right? We can never expect to have a nice, relaxed, loose horse that can go do the things we need it to do safely if we don't, start with a starting point like this right here. And it's going to be very, very brief, but that's what you got to start from. Then we can build from that. I think there's a lot of people out there who just expect their horse to be stiff. And that's just all they've ever known is horses that are constantly, their neck's up, their head's way up in the air, their neck is stiff, their back's hollowed out, and they're just rigid. And a lot of people just learn to work with horses that way. They just think that's how horses are. And they get by, but that's also how a lot of people get hurt with horses and don't get their horses to perform at a good level. And then horses go sway back because they're always upside down like that. It's not good for their backs. Um, it's just not good for anything. So, different people have different approaches. Some people don't care about the relaxation and all the stuff I'm doing, and that's, I guess that's fine for them. But for me, I want my horse first and foremost relaxed. Then we engage their bodies so they're both relaxed and engaged, and then that's the basis for actually saddling and getting on and doing everything else. But then I at least have a baseline so that when I first step in the saddle, they might get a little bit tense and rigid, but they have that baseline and they know how to come back to a relaxed state. So pretty quick after I'm riding them, their heads down low, their backs engaged, they're driving up underneath themselves with their legs, and they look like a high quality horse, because every horse has the capability of looking like a really good horse. It's just a lot don't, because people don't know how to ask for it, or how to get the horse both first relaxed and then engaged. Most people have horses that are the exact opposite. Their bodies are disengaged, and yet they're not relaxed at all. They're tense, and so their head's way up in the air, their back's hollowed out, and they just look like crap, and they get sore easily and get lame easily. There we go. She's starting to relax. You can see that neck loosening up a little bit. And I think I've talked about this before too, but I'm just killing time while we wait for her to relax. Um, it's like a spouse, like me and my wife. I can't tell my wife, why don't you just relax right now? It doesn't work, right? If you've ever been told, relax, it's very difficult to relax on command. And that's for a human who knows what the word means. I definitely can't tell this horse to relax. All I can do is put her into a situation where I give her the opportunity to relax. And then I can reward her when she does. So all this work we've done for a couple of weeks has taught her that all the coping mechanisms don't really work. So she's not supposed to walk around right now. She's not supposed to leave. She's not supposed to chew on the lead rope. She's not supposed to whinny at other horses, all those sorts of things. And she didn't do a lot of those. For her, it really is just about leaving. But you can see with that shaking of her head and twitching, she's kind of coming out of that unstable state where there's the lick and chew. Look at that. She sticks that tongue way out. Big old lick and chew. And that's a different experience for her. See all that blinking, her head coming way down. I'm going to go ahead and just drop the lead rope and just walk away. And this is her reward right here. Now she decided to go ahead and start walking around. So I'm just going to come back up here and we'll kind of do it again. So what she's finding from that right there, ask her to take a step forward. There we go. So what she's finding right there is she found the relaxation. I walked away, but she couldn't hold on to that relaxation, right? I certainly don't want to be sitting on the back of a horse that doesn't have the ability to stay relaxed on its own. So I know it takes a lot of time, but we have to go through that process until I can walk over to the fence, leave her here, and she goes, "Oh, cool, you're gone. I can relax even more." So I'm kind of mimicking haltering here. She's doing really good with it, making sure I'm putting my hands around her neck like that, like I'd have to do to put the halter on. All right. Now I'm going to just give her that opportunity to relax again. And it happens a lot quicker, right? It wasn't a full lick and chew, but she lets her neck relax there. If you think back to what happened a second ago, so she found that relaxation while she was focused on me and I had the lead rope and everything was kind of set, right? She didn't really have any choice what to do. So she found the relaxation. When I dropped this lead rope and I walked away, I was no longer standing here in front of her, kind of requiring her to focus on me, right? And that's when she kind of lost her shit and was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do." And all of a sudden she's walking around and moving and she's like, I just don't know what to do, right? It's like the regulator came off and all of a sudden she's just, if you've ever gone diving, the regulator pops off your tank, it just spews bubbles everywhere. Um, that's kind of how it was for her. She no longer had that constraint to just stand here. Well, if I was going to step on her back, or even if I was going to go pony her and step on another horse, I'm not really in that position of focus anymore, right? Especially if I'm on her back. Well, if she's going to lose her shit and start walking around and spiral up and not know what to do, not be able to find that relaxation, that's going to be a problem when I'm sitting on her back. So this may not seem like we're working on riding right now, but we are. She starts to lower that neck, loosen everything up. Lots of blinking, quite a bit of twitching. You can see as she's loosening those muscles. I don't know if you've ever experienced it. If you have a muscle that's been tight for a very long time and you maybe didn't even realize it was tight, and then you start actively trying to relax it, like I'm trying to think of an example, but maybe if you always stand with your shoulders kind of up and tight and you just don't really realize it, and then somebody tells you just lower your shoulders and just relax those traps, I think, whatever these are, lats, I don't know, anyway. um but if you've ever had that experience where you have a muscle that's tight and been engaged for a really really long time, and then you actively try to relax it, sometimes you'll get twitching and other muscles don't quite know how to compensate, and weird things start to happen. And that's what you're seeing with her as she starts to lower her neck, just like that right there. See how she kind of twists her head and then it jerks a little bit, and because she's not used to that, to being able to lower her head. She's used to always having that tighten up. you can see the percentage time where her head is stiff and up versus relaxed and down is starting to shift. When we first started, it was less than 1% of the time that her head was down. I mean, she had maybe drop it down, but it came right back up. Now she's kind of leaving her head down a good chunk of the time, maybe 25%. See how it kind of stays down there, and it'll probably come there. It comes back up a little bit. There's looking at you. Beautiful. Now, the same thing as before, I'm going to give her the opportunity to just stay here and relax while I walk away. We'll see if she wants to take it this time, or if she spins herself up. I'm okay with that. Like, eventually, I would rather her not even take those few steps up here. But you can see she looks and chews again. She walked a few steps, but she actually stepped on the rope, and she's giving to that pressure. So, I don't really teach horses to ground tie specifically, but I do teach them that if I'm not actively asking them to go anywhere, there's really no reason to go anywhere. And so that's basically ground tying. If the lead rope is attached to the halter, then she should go wherever the pressure on the lead rope tells her to go. And if the lead rope's laying on the ground, well, that pressure is going straight down. That means she should just stand perfectly still. So, I mean, in a way, I guess you could call that ground tying. It's just, I don't do ground tying in the traditional sense, but I guess, I mean, it is ground tying. So anyway. All right, so that was pretty good. I'm going to move on. I want to do some desensitizing with her. I like that she didn't kind of pull away from me there. I like that she's not scared about that rope going around her feet either. That's awesome. I imagine Stephanie's worked on that some. All right, so the desensitizing, well, I'm going to do a combination of desensitizing and sensitizing now. So this exercise I'm going to do, very simple exercise. I'm going to walk up, toss the rope over her back in rhythm. Just going to keep tossing it and probably wait for her looking at you, or at least wait for a little bit of relaxation. Definitely wait for her to quit moving. So if I walk up and throw the rope and she goes, oh my gosh, the rope, and starts moving around, I'll stay with that until she stops moving. And then I'm going to transition to asking her hind end to yield away from me and start using the rope to ask her to move. So this is the sensitizing part of it. So we did the desensitizing, now we're going to do the sensitizing. I'm asking that hind foot to step up and under herself like that. A lot of times when they're nervous, they'll step together like that or kind of step on themselves. I want her to actually step up and over, and that means that this whole loin side is loosening up on her, and that's what I'm looking for. And then once she's done a nice step over, I'll go back to throwing the rope over her back, the desensitizing, and let her know to stop. So what I'm letting her know, what I'm starting to teach her here, just like I've done this in other ways, but this is another technique of teaching her that, hey, some things mean you need to move, and some things mean you don't need to move. If I'm just tossing this over your back, you don't need to do anything about it. Just stand still. That's like throwing the saddle on. You don't want her running around when you throw the saddle on, right? But if I direct my energy at her side, or I might even tap her side like I would with my foot if I was riding her, and I start waving this rope at you and getting bigger with the rope, then you need to yield away from that pressure. So again, direct correlation to riding. When I go up there and I saddle her and I toss my saddle on, I don't want her spinning around in a circle. But when I step onto her, I still don't want her moving around in a circle. But then if I bend her and I put my leg on her side, I do want her to move off that pressure, right? Then if I take that leg off of her side, I want her to come back to a stop. So again, we're mimicking exactly what we're going to be doing under saddle. That was a terrible throw. Good. So I've done this a few times the last couple days. and she knows, you see there's still some flinchiness there. I want all of that to go away. But she does have this foot cocked over here, so she is, and I can see her tensing the muscles on this side a little bit every time I throw this rope over. So she still is kind of thinking about trying to kick at me. I have this lead rope short enough where she wouldn't be able to kick me, so she's not even trying it, and she knows she can't. But I'm not. So I'm not talking about kicking me as in like, oh my gosh, I'm about to get kicked. it's just letting me know that she has a lot of anxiety about what's going on. She's in a very defensive state. She's not in a relaxed state. All right, so she did pretty good with that. Like I talked about, she's still defensive, but now I'm going to go ahead and ask her to disengage here. See, she's a little bit stuck. And you can see when she did come unstuck, she kind of blew up. Now again, when I'm riding her, so okay, hang on. So she's moving around when I'm not asking her to, so I'm going to go back to desensitizing. And she knows that means stop, so she comes to a stop. And then we can end that iteration. So like I was saying, if I'm riding her, like I said, throw the saddle on, I get on her, the first thing I'm going to do is bend her and ask her to push that hind end around. If she's stuck and I get on her and she's all stiff, and then I finally ask her to move that hind end and she's stiff and she doesn't want to do it, and finally she jumps and blows up, and of course the weight on the saddle is going to shift because she's going, oof, she may go into bucking there, or it just may not be a good experience for her or me. So I want her to be very experienced with disengaging this hind end in a much more loose and natural way. That's much better. She's not twitching when I throw that rope over near as much. And she doesn't have that foot cocked up like she's going to kick. Okay, you see she's stepping back there and she's stepping together. There she actually stepped under. Now I'm going to go back to desensitizing until she comes to a stop. All right. Now I might just ask her to disengage this hind end again. That wasn't great. She didn't really step very far under. She's very tight in this hind end right now. That was a little bit better. I'll give her that one. Okay, so you can see she's too far back when she's doing that disengaging in the hind end. There's a nice big sigh. I might end on that one. She tends to be stepping backwards a lot. If you rewind that a little bit, you'll see that the reason she wasn't stepping up and under with that hind foot is that everything was running backwards. So what I'm going to do now is simply do the opposite of that. I'm just going to send her, and usually I send her in the opposite direction of the way she's set up, right? But in this case, she's set up to go to the left because I set her up for that, if that makes sense. She didn't choose to be in this configuration. I came up here and was working with her, and I put her in this configuration. So I'm not going to send her to my right. I'm going to send her to my left. And the reason I'm sending her forward, see right there how there's a lot of lack of forward movement there? When I was disengaging that hind end, I had a lot of lack of forward movement, right? I had a lot of backwards movement. And when I sent her forward, she had all that lateral movement, but she really didn't want to go forward. And there she didn't disengage the hind end very well. So all these things work together. So I'm just going to transition right back to, if I can get my rope figured out here. Transition right back to desensitizing. And I'm going to go ahead and ask her hind end to step over to disengage. That's not disengaging. That was disengaging. But you can see right after she does one good disengage step, there's a lot of backwards, right? So what are we going to do? One of the principles of horse training, do the opposite, send her forward. See how she wants to go backwards? Her first instinct is draw backwards, but I'm asking her to go forward. So this is part of balancing your horse up. She has too much draw back. We're going to balance that up with go forward. Okay. Now she didn't disengage that hind end very well, so we'll go back to working on that. First, desensitizing. She's getting a lot better about that desensitizing, right? I wouldn't say she's super relaxed, but she's definitely not. Her weight's actually off of that foot instead of this foot. So she's not getting ready to kick me anymore. There's no twitching going on in her body. Much better. All right, I'm going to go ahead and ask this hind end to disengage. Good. She kind of started. And there she got it a little bit better. Not super happy with any of this. You can see how much she's going backwards, and it's not helping her. That's why I'm sending her forward. There we go. Okay, I'm going to ask her to disengage again. So all these steps are together or backwards, and I'm not punishing her for it. I'm just not releasing on it. I'm just saying that's not what I'm looking for. That right there is what I'm looking for. And she actually had a little forward movement in that. She stepped back at the very, very end. But if you watch her front feet and even her back feet, she actually got a little bit of forward movement in that. And now my throwing the rope over her back is actually kind of a reward for her, right? Because me throwing the rope over All right, moving on to Braveheart. We just got done working Tehya. Looks like my mic is working, so here we go. Now, Braveheart, of course, is a very different horse than Tehya. And about where we are on him, everything's working pretty good if he decides to play ball. When he doesn't want to play ball, things don't work so good. And, it's kind of funny because with him, sometimes I'm doing very advanced things because he's playing ball with me. And sometimes I'm doing very, very basic things because he's not. And it's like the most basic of things, like just walking forward, putting some pressure on that lead rope and having him come with me, a lot of times doesn't work. But if he is willing, but it's just stubbornness. It's not that he doesn't know what to do. It's not that he's scared. It's just pure stubbornness. I'm just gonna go ahead and catch him if I can. Sometimes he's a little bit of a stink bug about being caught because again he's stubborn and he knows what being caught is all about. But that's great right there. So a few days, several times he's like allowed me to get into position to catch him. But when I actually try to get his nose in the halter, he takes his nose way away and does this whole dramatic thing. Other days, he just runs around and doesn't let me get in position to catch him. So I've been working on that. Obviously, the work has paid off because that was fantastic right there. That was exactly how he should be caught. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate leading him and see if he is as stubborn as what I was talking about. I'll go ahead and lead him up and see how this goes. So right there, he let up good. You can see that was a second or two of tension on the rope, but then he gave to it. So been doing a lot of work on this. Maybe it's fixed. We'll see. He's had a little bit of diarrhea. I need to muck in here. It rained yesterday, and so I didn't muck because everything was so wet. Um, I think the diarrhea is just from greatly increasing his alfalfa intake, so it's probably just a little bit. But I mean, he's been here 3 weeks, and it's been, so it could be a stress thing. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly why he's having some diarrhea, but it's not really terrible diarrhea, but a little bit. That leading was great, so not gonna belabor that point if he's good with it. In a second, I do want to lead him out this gate and over to the indoor, and I'll spin the camera when I do that, and he'll probably balk when he starts to go out the gate, but who knows? We'll see. Before I lead him to the indoor, I want to just test all my little things. So I want to make sure lateral flexion works. I want to make sure disengaging his hind end works. I want to make sure just sending and stopping works. So I think I'll start out just by sending him. He tried to go the wrong way, but it didn't take too much to remind him which is the correct direction. The one thing I'm really, I don't want to say concerned, but the one thing I'm really keeping an eye on him with is the way he sticks his nose out like that. You can see he kind of does it at the walk, like his head is nice and low, but his nose is out rather than nice and in. And it doesn't have to be perfectly vertical, but if I speed him up to a trot, you'll really see it. Right there, see how he sticks that nose out? Now again, I don't know if that's chiropractic, massage, or just body control, just building the correct muscles. I think you'll agree his hips look so much better in terms of muscling than when he got here. He's turning into a really pretty horse, and he's moving. I think he's still moving better than when he got here. Keep going. But like right there, he stuck his nose way out, and he almost slipped off his front feet because he was just so unbalanced. Sorry, got a hair in my mouth. I'd like to get him a little snappier. When I point, I want him to go a little quicker, especially because he is such a dull horse and such a stubborn horse. See how he's really sticking his nose out there. He's even looking at chewing with his nose stuck out, so it's kind of weird. But I just like him to be a little snappier about kind of everything. He kind of leaned back on that right there. Oh yeah, see now he's stuck. He doesn't want to get off that pressure, and I could feel that just by the way he stopped. I knew he didn't want to move forward. And so again, balancing the horse up. See how his hind feet still have not moved? He moved his front feet, but his hind feet haven't moved, and the hind feet's where the locomotion comes from. So he hasn't truly given and moved forward until his hind feet step forward. Now, there's a lot of tricks people will use to lead a horse up, like wrapping the rope around the pole, or chains, all kinds of mechanical things. I don't do any of that crap. To me, the point of what I'm trying to do here is not to lead him from there to here. The point of what I'm trying to do today is teach him how to be led from there to here correctly. And if I use a bunch of mechanical means or whatever to just force him to lead up, then I haven't actually really accomplished anything in terms of getting into his brain. But if I sit here and give him the time to think about it, and you can see I'm putting constant pressure on this rope, not a ton, I'm not wearing myself out or anything, but just, it's enough pressure that it's annoying on his pole and on the whole halter. And he's going to be stubborn, but I'm way more stubborn than he is. So we're just going to sit here, and the key here is that this pressure on this rope will not come loose until he steps forward. 100%. There is no reason that I could think of, besides an atomic bomb over there, that I would let go of this rope before he steps forward. And a lot of people will try to do this, but is he trying to give? He's trying to stretch out to give, but I want those back feet to actually move. There. Now he gets loose, or gets the rope loose. So a lot of people will think they're doing what I'm doing. They pick up on the rope and the horse doesn't move, and so they rearrange, and then they pick up again, and then they rearrange and they pick up again. And every time you're doing that, you're releasing, and the person doesn't realize they're releasing, but the horse does. And so the horse feels that release every time, and he goes, well, there was tension and I did nothing and I got a release. And there was tension and I did nothing and I got a release. And there was tension and I did nothing and I got a release. And then the person goes, why won't my horse move? Well, you just taught it 3 times in a row. It doesn't need to move and he'll still get the release. So very, very important. Once you pick up on that rope, you're committed to holding that same amount of pressure until he steps forward. Even if he were to start backing up here, let's say I was in a much bigger area, I was out of the pasture. Even if he starts to back up and back up and back up, and to the best of my ability, I'm going to keep the same amount of pressure on the rope no matter where he drags me around in the pasture until he steps forward 1 step. And it doesn't matter if he steps all the way back forward to the point where we started at. He could back up half a mile, but if he steps forward 1 step, he gets off that pressure. Okay? So this is really, really important for when you start tying a horse to the fence and just, or if you want to tie the horse in the trailer or anything. But, tying horses is really, really important in my program. I like to leave horses tied for maybe 8 hours a day. If it's 8 hours, I probably would take them to water in the halftime. But, let's say 4 hours a day if I can. There he steps up and he gets the release. If he's tied, if I just take a horse like him before I would not tie him yet, by the way, because when I pick up on this rope and that pressure hits the halter, he needs to know how to give to it. If I tie him hard and fast to the fence and he sits into it and then gets scared, the only place he has to go is sit back and break something, and then he starts to learn that he can break stuff and get away with it. And he's a horse that could really become a bad sit and back horse. So I would not tie him yet. But once I get him to the point where every time I pick up on that pressure, he goes, oh, I know what to do. I just release the pressure like that. I step forward. Then I can tie him to the fence all day. And even if he gets a little bit scared and all of a sudden hits the end of that rope, he'll just be like, oh, I know what to do. I give to that pressure. And it's really, really good for horses to get tied up once they get to that point. But you can't do it too early and start teaching them bad habits. And if they're still at the point like this where they're hanging on that halter and not giving to that pressure and being stubborn, you do not want to be tying them up yet. The best way to get him out of this stubbornness is just to show him that stubbornness doesn't have any point. It's not to get into a huge fight with him and, whip him up and make him move right now. It's really not that. Now in the groundwork, that's going to help get rid of some of the stubbornness. When I point, you need to move right now. But in this instance, like leading, I'm not going to get somebody back there behind him, whipping him, and move up, because that's just going to drive him more stubborn. I mean, I'm a very stubborn person, so I know how stubbornness works. And the more pressure somebody puts on you to try to get you to do something, the more stubborn you get. On the other hand, if they just say, oh, you need to do this, and you say, well, I'm not going to, I don't want to do that. And they say, well, okay, you can suffer the consequences until you do decide to do it. And then you just get to be stubborn as long as you want to be stubborn. And then finally you're like, man, this isn't working out very well for me. So you finally do it. And that does work out well for you. Then the next time it's your choice not to be stubborn. And you can actually use this horse's stubbornness, for you instead of against you. Right there. Notice that when he does step forward, I just open my hand and release. What I found is that, especially when I'm kind of leaning back, pulling on a horse and sitting there for 20 minutes, when that horse finally steps forward, I don't have the timing and the reaction time to step forward and give that release with my whole body and arm. But what I do have is that reaction time to just open my hand. So if I'm pulling on that horse and he finally gives, the quickest way for me to give back to the horse is just open my hand. So just a little tip. All right, so I picked up. Once again, I'm going to hold this pressure until this horse moves. Let him be stubborn as long as he wants to. I don't know if this horse has ever had problems trailer loading, but I guarantee it would. I've tried to load. I've been hired by so many people so many times to load horses that are like him. That you lead them up to the trailer and then boom, they get like this right at the trailer. I would actually rather have the horse have this issue here in the pen than at the trailer, because I don't want to get into this fight at the trailer. I want to get in this fight here. So if I can get him to learn here that every single time when that halter comes tight, you just step up to it. And about, oh, he was leaning forward. I thought he was going to take a step. Anyway, once we get through this, then I doubt he'll ever have issues trailer loading, because we've already gone through this fight. And that's how most of my horses are. I mean, every colt I've ever started, I don't attempt to trailer load them until they're nice and what I consider halter broke, which is, like I said, to me, halter broke is every time I pick up on this lead rope, he just steps forward nicely. And I don't even attempt to load a horse until he's at that point. But then once he is, the very first time the horse ever gets in the trailer, I pretty much just walk in the trailer, because if I'm leading the horse somewhere, the horse is going no matter what. That's just how it is at that point. All right, I'm going to get him woken up a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of more groundwork, and then I'm going to lead him out and take him to the indoor. But I think we'd spend the rest of the day just trying to get 5 steps towards the gate if I don't wake him up a little bit. So there's where I want to get that responsiveness. That's going to help in my leading. So there, he just chose where to go. I asked him to stop, and he chose to go the other direction on his own. So I'm just going to send him off the other way. Give him the opportunity to stop. There. That's why I language is very important. I always use the term ask him to stop or give him the opportunity to stop. I never say stop him. Like when I'm teaching people how to do groundwork, I never say stop the horse. I say give him the opportunity to stop. Because if you give him that opportunity and either he goes the other direction or he continues going this way, he does anything except stopping, you're not going to force him to stop. You're just going to ask him to do the opposite of whatever he does wrong. And eventually he'll just get balanced right here. Good. That time he actually thought about which way I was asking him to go. Okay, I asked him to stop and he didn't stop, so now we are going to go the other direction. You can see he just thinks that he runs the show. That's the thing with him. He thinks that he's smarter than me. He knows what he knows what the game is. He's like, I don't need to listen to you. I'm just going to do what I think is the best thing. That was better. Okay, one thing I noticed while I was doing groundwork right there, we were coming around, I think right here, I'm sure it's in front of the camera, you probably could see it. He kind of pulled his nose out to the outside like that, like he's pulling it against the halter, like trying to pull it out of my hand, sort of. Now, I didn't have the rope very tight, so he didn't have anything to pull against. But I think he has a habit of getting away with pulling the rope out of people's hands, probably. Just a guess. So one thing I'm going to work on, since he has that in his mind of, yanking the rope out of my hand, I'm going to work on lateral flexion because that's kind of the antidote for that. And you can see the tenseness that he has, just me walking up here. So, just as far as kind of gauging when he might be ready to go saddle, I'm obviously not going to move into saddling until I can just walk up and throw my arm over his back and he has no reaction to it, basically. So you can see all that tenseness. Well, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but this whole side of his ribs, his back leg, as soon as I walked up and kind of put my arm over his back, he went like that. There was a lot of twitching in there again. That was a little bit better. So that's something that's going to need a lot of work right now. That's not what I'm working on. I'm working on lateral flexion. But that is on the docket to work on at some point. He's doing that flexion okay. He's not as flexible as I'd like. I think partly that's just because he's a larger horse and he just has a lot of mass in his neck. But I'd like him to get more flexible than that. But he's trying for me there. I'm not mad about that. He's responding to the feel of that halter pretty well. His head's coming back to a lower point. So one thing I watch for while I'm doing this lateral flexion is when his head comes around to the side and then I release and it comes back to straight. Does it come back to straight in an upward motion or does it come back to straight in a flat or even downward motion? And with him, it's coming back to straight pretty much in a flat or downward. And so that means his neck is fairly relaxed. He's not tensing in the release of the flexion, right? There, watch his head. That one actually went up a little bit, right? Not the end of the world, just something to notice. If he's really truly committing to that flexion, like that was a little bit better. But then it kind of popped up at the end, so I might keep doing that a little bit. If he's the whole point of the flexion is to soften up the other side of his neck, right? Because if he's flexing this way, this side of his neck has to get looser, right? Well, when I release that flexion, if that neck is truly released and gotten looser, then his head should come down to a lower point. Otherwise, the flexion isn't doing its job of loosening up his neck. He's kind of hanging on the halter here, so I'm waiting for him to put slack back in the halter. There, he did a little bit. Work on the other side. All right, same thing. You can see he stepped away, got a little tense on this side. Wasn't quite as flinchy as he was on the other side, but still not really where we want it. That was softer though. That was quite a bit better. Okay, when he released and came back to front, you saw his head kind of climb a little bit, which tells me that he needs a few more reps of this to really relax and loosen all those muscles up. Now his head's starting to lower down, so I can tell his neck is relaxing. I'm also watching his muzzle. There's a ton of twitching going on in both bottom and upper lip. And so I'm not interrupting this because he's in a coming down mode right now. He's coming down from that sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system. I don't want to interrupt that. So that's why I'm not doing any more lateral flexions right here. You can see all this stuff going on, kind of like what we were watching with Tehya earlier. He's really coming down. So what he did right there, that was a little kind of a swallow. So if you remember to the science of licking and chewing, when they're up, they don't need to have the saliva flow going because they're in that fight or flight mode, right? You're not in the eat mode, so you don't need that saliva flow going. When they come down to rest and digest, or the parasympathetic nervous system, they're ready to go back to eating, and so the saliva flow starts. So licking and chewing is their mouth dealing with that saliva flow. Well, what a lot of times a really stubborn horse will do, and he definitely qualifies, is they don't want to lick and chew, but the saliva flow is going anyway, and so they'll swallow without licking and chewing, and it's kind of them like, I know I have to deal with the saliva, but I don't want to lick and chew. And so that's what he did right there, and so I'm just gonna wait for a full lick and chew. It's not really a big deal. It's not bad or anything. It's just kind of funny when you see it because not every horse will do that. Most horses will just lick and chew when they get to that point. It's really just the super stubborn horses that do that. Still a ton of twitching going on. this is a good example of a horse that'll go to sleep almost almost literally before they lick and chew. And this is just my theory, but I think that when a horse is like this, where they'll go to sleep before they lick and chew, that's probably what they're doing most days when they get their sleep. So they're fully relaxed once they go to sleep. So they're getting by on just enough sleep, add a little bit of, still a little bit anxious. And he's a horse that doesn't really spend most of his time at a very high level of anxiety, as opposed to Tehya. Tehya spends most of her time at a very high level of anxiety. He spends most of his time at a pretty low level of anxiety, which is great, but not no anxiety, right? He's not truly totally relaxed. And I think he even sleeps that well. Obviously, you're not going to get good sleep if you're maintaining that little bit of level of alertness. So you can see now he woke back up, but we're still waiting on that lick and chew. And I see this from horses a lot. And I usually see quite a bit of improvement out of them after a couple days later, after they learn how to actually relax rather than just going to sleep, if that makes sense. So this is a good thing to see, and it kind of makes sense because I know this horse's owner was telling me that he takes care, or he, in the old herd when he lived at her place before here, he was kind of the herd leader. He was in charge of all the horses, and so it makes sense that he's going to live at some level of alertness. If you're the president of the United States, I don't care how calm a person you are, you have a certain level of anxiety just because of the responsibility that you carry, right? I think with him, the responsibility that he had for the other horses in the herd kept him at a certain level of alertness. And it's just not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't want him. We do want him a little bit alert, right? But we also need him to get sleep. They need to go through that cycle of being alert in the daytime when they're working on stuff, and when they go to sleep, they need to fully relax and actually get good deep sleep. And it makes me wonder. I've been wanting to get sleep trackers. They make these sleep trackers for horses that I think they wear it in a halter, and I've been wanting to start studying horses' sleep in conjunction with the training that I do. But I would bet if we had a sleep tracker on him that he's getting adequate sleep, but not really good sleep. And I will bet after a little bit more of these types of situations here, he'll start getting much deeper sleep because he'll learn how to relax before he goes to sleep. And what that's going to allow him to do, I mean, not just like with humans, the better sleep you get, the better you're able to learn. So sleep is really important for kind of clearing out the old memories and the old things that our brain is carrying, and either kind of writing them to long-term memory or clearing them out if they're just not important. There's a good lick and chew. And so like I say with sleep, with him getting, if he does start getting really good sleep, that's just going to compound the good effects of the training that we're doing, because it's going to allow him to unwrite all the old stuff that he knew as a Mustang, that he learned from being in bad situations at BLM and all that stuff, and let him get rid of all that and rewrite the new memories of how to get along good in a domestic situation like this. Very good. I'm going to go ahead and be done with him today. That was a really good little interaction right there. My plan was to take him into the indoor today, but work with the horse you have today. And that was a great little interaction. I wasn't even expecting that to happen, but I think that little interaction right there is going to pay dividends for us later on, and I want him to think on that. I might come back later in the day if I have some more time, do a second session with him, but that was a very productive day either way. So I hope you enjoyed. Finally got Tehya and Braveheart both on YouTube, and I love that he's still staying in that same place. He'll probably just go to sleep right there, even as I leave the pen. All right, talk to you later.